Hey guys, Christy here from the Stamp Cycle, and welcome to another video for my YouTube channel and blog. For today's card, I'm going to be showing you how to do a faux watercolor technique. Now, I love to watercolor and I love the look of watercolor, but I don't always have the time to sit down and watercolor images or create a watercolor piece just on my own with watercolor paints and ink and brushes. So this is a great way to use your stamps and your inks and create that watercolor look without having to put in all the effort that watercolor can take sometimes. So for this card today, we're going to be using 3 different stamp sets. I have the Crazy About You stamp set. We'll be using that leaf image. The Blooms and Blossoms stamp set. We'll be using a couple of the flower images from that stamp set. And then finally, we have the Botanical Blooms stamp set. And we'll be using that kind of 5-petal larger flower there. So I have a piece of watercolor paper, and it's cut to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I've got a towel off to the side, and I've also got a water bottle. So that's going to be key for creating this watercolor look. So the first thing you want to do is get your stamp inked up. I'm using Sweet Sugar Plum ink here from Stampin' Up. And I've inked up my stamp, and now I'm just going to spray it with this water bottle. I'm going to come back about a foot and a half, and then spray this stamp with the water. The key to this is you want to get enough water so that the ink moves, but not too much water that you lose the shape of the image. So once you spray it, you'll just stamp it onto your watercolor piece, and you see you get the water will move the color, and it gives you that watercolor look without actually watercoloring. So then you can just go back in, re-ink your stamp, spray it, and then stamp it again. Now you also want to make sure that you don't have too little water on the stamp, because then it'll just look like a stamped image and you won't get that watercolor look that we're going for. So you see here, I'm just stamping it in the ink, spraying it with water, then stamping it down onto my watercolor piece. If you get too much water pulled onto your stamp, you can just clean it off and start over again. And I do that several times as I'm stamping this pattern, because the water does have a tendency to pull up. So I start with my largest image first, because remember, you can always go in and fill in with smaller images, but it's very hard once you've stamped out your pattern to go back in and fill in with larger images. So whenever you're stamping a background like this, you always want to start with your largest image. So I'm going to come in with my second largest image here, and I've stamped that with Calypso Coral ink, and I'm just going to again stamp this in like a triangle pattern onto my watercolor paper, stamping the image in the ink, spraying it with the water, and then stamping onto the watercolor paper. So for this background, I am going to layer some of the images on top of the other ones. You know, watercolor is it flows. It's not always very sharp, clean images. So you know, you can layer flowers on top of flowers. I will come in with the leaves, and I will layer those leaves on top of some of the flower images, and you'll see me do that here. So now I have some mint macaron ink, and I'm going to use that color for the leaves in this background. So not all inks are the same with this technique. So the mint macaron didn't really handle the water as well as some of the other inks. It might be also the shape of the image. So you might want to just test it first, but I just kind of worked with it, and I went with what the stamp was giving me here, and I really did like the results. So after I got all of my larger images stamped, I'm just coming in with some smaller images here and filling in some of the blank spots. I've got this small little star flower that I'm stamping in Delightful Dijon, and then I have this other really small little flower that I'm going to stamp with the Tip Top Taupe. Just remember to spray between every time you stamp, even for these little tiny stamps like this one. So now we're going to work on putting the rest of the card together. The first sample that I made, I did a Love You Mom, but for this card, we're going to use the Hello You Thinlits. We're going to use that U die there. And I'm going to cut that U die out of some Calypso Coral cardstock, and I'm going to cut that 3 times so that I can layer it together and get a chipboard type effect. I like to use Ranger Multi-Medium Matte Glue for these type of techniques for layering die cuts like this, because when it oozes out, it dries clear and matte and you can't see the glue. So it's great for this type of thing. So I wanted the saying to be "You rock," so I grabbed the rock stamp from that same Crazy About You stamp set, and I'm just going to heat emboss it on this little strip of Tip Top Taupe cardstock. I pre-treated it with my anti-static tool, and now I'm just going to stamp the word rock using Versamark ink. And the anti-static tool really helps prevent from getting embossing powder in places that you don't want it to. So I highly suggest it, especially for sentiments. So once I've got that stamped and I've got white embossing powder applied, I'll then just heat set it with my heat tool. I'm then going to just flag the end of that little sentiment strip because I like the ends to be kind of flagged. I think it gives it a nice look. And then I'm just going to glue that onto my watercolored panel here, or my faux watercolor panel, if you will. And then I'm just going to use my grid paper there to get it straight. And then I'm going to glue that U right on top of the rock so that it says "You rock." I thought that was really cute. It would be a great card to send to some friends. So now that I've got both of the U and the rock adhered to this panel here, I'm going to take some scissors and just clip off that extra cardstock that's hanging off there. And then I'm going to adhere this entire panel to a top folding A2 card base. This is made out of some Tip Top Taupe cardstock. And I'm just going to use some Tombow adhesive to glue this on. I really like Tombow because it doesn't stick immediately, and it gives you time to really line up your layers and get perfect even layers. So I'm just going to adhere this onto the front, and then to finish off the card, no card is finished unless it has a little bit of glitter or bling, right? So I've just taken my Wink of Stella here, and I'm just going to color the entire die cut with that Wink of Stella to give this card just a little bit of interest and a little bit of bling. And that will do it for finishing this card off. I wanted to keep these cards simple, and I didn't want to add a lot of embellishments because I really wanted the faux watercolor to be the focal point. It's very a busy pattern and it really catches your eye, so I didn't want to draw it away with tons of embellishment. So I encourage you to take a look at the stamp sets that you have and give this faux watercolor technique a try. It's super easy to do, and I really think it gives a neat effect to your card, and gives you that watercolor look without having to put in all the effort. So if you want more information on the supplies I used, head on over to my blog at www.thestampcycle.com. Thanks everybody. Bye.